professionals, an argument that I personally consider fairly pointless or silly. People will say, well, what is the best unit? That's kind of a silly question about the military, because you have to ask, what is the best unit for what? The military has all kinds of exceptional people doing all kinds of interesting things. And so if what you want is direct action, of course, the Navy SEALs are excellent for that. The Marines have a lot of very fine people who do good direct action. Special Forces does very good direct action, but only Special Forces does the force multiplication, teaching, training, role. And that was to the heart and soul of what everybody did. In SOG, we had all of these teams. SOG was tasked, more about that a little later. SOG was intended to keep probably 40 to 50 American SF personnel on the ground at a time in Laos and Cambodia, hammering the Ho Chi Minh Trail. But we had more than that with us of these foreign tribesmen. And of course, in general, the relationship between the American Green Berets and the Montagnard people, and prior to them, the Noongs, who were the Chinese, Vietnamese, but eventually reached a point, the Noongs were great fighters, but a lot of them had been essentially killed off. Some had gotten old and retired. But that relationship, that intense brotherhood between the American Special Forces and our yards or montagnards, the word montagnard is French, and it just means mountain person, is what it means. But we call them yards. And the brotherhood between American SF and the Montagnard tribes was absolutely something beautiful. And we worked, of course, our teams, the American leader would be the 1-0, the Montagnard leader, and there were two leaders on a team. A lot of people don't understand this. The Montagnard leader was the reverse. He was called the 0-1. The assistant leader for the Americans would be the 1-1. The assistant leader for the Montagnards in their seniority system would be the 0-1. And when it came to the overall leadership of the missions, of course, that would be American SF. But when a SOG team was operating in enemy territory, in many respects, you were deferring to the Montagnard tribesmen, because these are people, they were essentially a Bronze Age culture. They grew up in the jungle, and that was their life. And they were so amazingly attuned to just what the operating terrain was like, that it would have been foolish for American SF to be trying to say what you did. The American leader would say, okay, here's the general direction we want to go to reach where we're going. He could have shown a map to the Montagnard leader, but maps didn't mean anything. Radios didn't mean anything to people in Hebron. It just by pointing in the right direction. And then the Montagnard leader would be responsible for picking the actual route. And so as you moved, let's say through Cambodia or southern Laos, their uncanny ability to hear things, sometimes because you're always operating in heavily patrolled areas they had at least hundreds of enemy infantry, and very, very good infantry, but you couldn't hear them necessarily because heavy jungle, and a lot of this was, especially in Cambodia, double and even triple canopy jungle. You couldn't hear people. Well, they could. They heard things in the jungle. So as you were moving, they could hear, in many cases, if any enemy activity was out there, they would hear it. And sometimes your Montagnard leader, the point man, he would just, you didn't talk in that type, everything was hand signals, but he would indicate, we're about to hit a trail, and give you the width of the trail. And he'd say, he's hearing an enemy unit, a patrol. There's 6 to 8 of them. They're coming from this direction, and they're moving in that direction. So you could move into a well-concealed position and you could check your watch, and somewhere around 8 minutes, you'd see a 6 to 8 man NVA patrol moving down a trail. You didn't even necessarily, you hadn't seen the trail yet. But an American could not hear those things. Another example, we worked in SOG operations. We had some odd friends that were out there in the jungle. They were called banded crates and bamboo